And when we talk about difficult economic times, we also need to have the conversation about investing in our future. And in 1983, when I walked through these hallways of East High School and eventually graduated in 1985, I remember a young man who at the age of 36 challenged all of us to imagine a great city. And it was Federico Pena who said that we cannot cut our way to prosperity. We also need to invest in our city. Well, folks, we're at a similar time where, yes, we have difficult budget times, but we need to envision the Denver that we always want to call home. And my family knows something about sacrifice, hard work, and the high expectations that it's going to take to get us out of this time. For a mother who grew up picking beets in the fields of northern Colorado, being the only one in her family to graduate from college, to go to college, and a father who was the only one in his family to go to college, one generation later, they made sure that all 13 of their children made it to college, 12 of them through these hallways. So folks, we know that this can be done. We know that it will take high expectations, it will take hard work, and it will take sacrifice, but together we can do it. My name is James Mejia, and I ask for your support.
Thank you. It's so great to be back here. I graduated from this place in 1978. It's an extraordinary place. I had the joy of putting two daughters through here. 10 years after I graduated from this institution, at a 10-year reunion of East High School, I chose to form a foundation called the I Have a Dream Foundation. And I learned a very fundamental thing about how you really change lives. So what the I Have a Dream Foundation did, as a group of alumni, we adopted a group of children, the lowest quartile in Denver, and asked ourselves why only 25 to 30% of them graduated. We then provided them relentless tutoring and sponsorship, because what we really found was a very fundamental thing that's taught me a lot about how I've done my public service, which is, it's really not institutions, it's not government. It wasn't the institution of East High that changed lives. It was a teacher, a social worker, or a nurse. And what government needs to do is to figure out how to do that. So I went on a 22-year journey. At age 51, I'm still thinking hard about this. And I've spent a lot of time working in the charter school movement, not because it's an opt-out, because it's an incubator about how we can do better. Which is why I was on the founding board of Denver Science and Technology, a great example of what we can do so well. It's why I went off to the New America School to serve as a volunteer superintendent and came off that board to save an institution that was imploding. Because I knew so well that those students too, who needed and wanted to learn English, had the right to do it in America. And it was a wonderful experience for me, because I really learned that same thing. It's truly unconditional love from adults to children that changes their lives. And we need to figure out institutions that facilitate that. But it's why I then went on to KIPP to figure out what is the scalable solution for low-income children in our city. Because you know what? It matters so much. Because the next mayor of Denver has to have a human capital strategy. We can no longer have the Colorado paradox where we import the talent for the great jobs of tomorrow. We fundamentally need to reach up and make sure that all children can have a seat at the good life, a table or place where not determined by their zip code, but because of the authenticity of great teachers and great principals in every school. That's what the next mayor needs to do. And I can do that with the Denver public school system. I can do it in a way that we can all have joy together. We can be the first place in the nation where an urban school district is going to do great things together. And that's the join. That's the challenge of our time. It's the civil rights issue of our time. Join me. Let's do something big. I'm excited. Thanks.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Theresa Spahn, and I want to serve as your next mayor. I'd like to take a few minutes to thank everybody who put a tremendous amount of time to put this together. And also, my son attends East High School as well. And I'd like to thank all the teachers who are out in the audience tonight, because you do an amazing job. I'm so impressed with the school, so thank you very much. You know, we're all talking about that, you know, these are economic hard times, but we also I see that this is a tremendous opportunity for Denver. And you know, cities all over the nation are struggling with closing budget gaps, But cities who are really advancing and moving forward are cities who are looking at themselves from the ground up and seeing this as an opportunity for change. And what we need right now is somebody who's a bold thinker, somebody, we all talk about leadership, that's exactly what we need, somebody who has a track record of proven change and a track record of being a great leader. And I'm that leader, and I'm going to serve as your mayor. Tonight we're not talking about what we normally talk about, which are the budget, which are where we can improve and serve the citizens better. Tonight it is about the schools. And it is exactly where we need to partner, and we need to collaborate, and we do need to work together to make sure that every single one of our children move forward and graduate from school and are college ready. There's nothing more critically important. A little bit about my professional background. I was the director of Office of the Child's Representative, and that's an agency I built from the ground up. I represented 19,000 children. I oversaw 250 lawyers, and I oversaw a multi-million-dollar budget. And that agency was created to make the system better for children in the court system. And I changed that culture. But I also want to tell you a little bit to kind of show you about my leadership skills. And I was able to go on and work for Becky Love Corliss and Sandra Day Connor nationally to do policy reform. And I stand here today with this great legal career and these great opportunities that I've had and ask you to be your mayor. But what most people don't know is that I did graduate from high school. I grew up in 52nd and Federal. My family's from Northwest Denver, and my dad actually graduated from Manual High School as well. But I didn't graduate from high school, and I had to go back and get my high school diploma. So no one appreciates more than I do how critically important that high school diploma is, and I will be committed to working to make sure that our children graduate. So thank you for inviting me tonight.
I sent you some candidate-specific questions. We're going to ask 3 of these specific questions before we go into our rapid fire round, and then we'll come back and ask the other 3 specific questions. So I'm going to start, and it happens that I'm starting with Carol Boigon. The mayor of Denver, of course, is not the superintendent of the school district. How do you see the mayor affecting school policy decisions? How would you specifically achieve your education policy goals? And if the district is failing, would you support mayoral control of schools like in New York and Washington, D.C.?
Thank you, Cynthia. It's a good question. No, for my job under Wellington Webb, Mayor Webb, was to create the Mayor's Office for Education and Children and to figure out exactly what the relationship was between the city and the schools. And at that time, it was pretty hostile. There wasn't a good working relationship between the mayor and superintendent. There was no good working relationship between council members and school board members. And there certainly wasn't a good relationship between neighborhoods and schools. We set out to change that. And I will tell you all the things we did. We created, we reenacted the City Schools Coordinating Commission. We met monthly. Tons of people came, big meeting, mayor and superintendent there. We created Denver Head Start and managed that for many years. We built before and after school programs. We expanded school-based health centers. We tried minority teacher recruitment. That one was not as successful as some of our other efforts. We did truancy programs to get kids into school. We placed police in the schools. We shared crossing guards. We looked at ways to do shared services with garbage and snow removal and a variety of other efforts. And I will tell you, looking back over those 7.5 years, it was not enough. At the time, the legislature, actually the Speaker of the House, came to me and said, "Will the mayor take over the schools?" And I put the question to Mayor Webb. And he said no, that he believed in the separation that was created both in the state constitution and conceived nationally to take the politics of curriculum out of general purpose politics. And I hold to that position. I think that's the right way to go. But I do think there are alternatives. I do think there are alternative things we can do in addition. And as I said in my opening, the 2 long remarks, and I'll come back to them later, now that I recognize the orange card, there's a different way to go that may be more effective.
Thank you. We're going to swing over to Chris Romer next. Chris, last year you were state senator. You voted in favor of SB 191. bill about teacher tenure, time, tenure, pay to effectiveness. And you might have seen Nicholas Kristof column in the New York Times on Saturday. The column was titled, "Pay Teachers More." And in the column, Kristof wrote this, quote, "I'm not a fan of teachers' unions. They use their clout to gain job security more than play, thus making the field safe for low achievers. Teaching work rules are often inflexible, benefits are generous relative to salaries, and it is difficult or impossible to dismiss teachers who are ineffective." End quote. What do you think about that statement? Disagree? Agree? Got about 3 minutes to discuss.
Sure. That was a mouthful, Eli. Thank you. Let me do it in 2 words. Let me speak about 191 first, because that's really the heart of the question, and then I'll speak about the columnist's points, which I think are a little over the top. Look, 191, Senate Bill 191 was the change we made. It was very tough. There's basically 3 to 4 of us Democrats that stood with all the Republicans to pass that bill. I played a very vital role in getting that out of the Education Committee because it was tough to get that out of a Democratic-dominated Education Committee. And it was really important for us to understand that it was actually out of respect for teachers that we passed that bill. And look, I've worked with an awful lot of members from the DCPA and the CEA to pass Amendment 23 when I was chair of the Children's Campaign. And I have been in their foxhole a lot, a whole lot, when fighting for money. All over that legislature, we tried to pass bills to put more money in schools. So they're my friend. And I was particularly honored after the passage of 191. The CEA came to me this year to have me work with Governor Hickenlooper to understand the integrity of why we need to implement that consistently all over the state. So I have a strong relationship with that partnership. But on the issue of 191, they were wrong. The real key to 191 is the accountability, the ability for us to judge accountability for teachers, but most importantly, principals. The hidden gem in Senate Bill 191 is the ability to put great principals and great teachers in every classroom. When I was the superintendent of the New America Schools, the first thing I had to do was let a principal go off that campus and become the principal myself. And I learned a very important saying from a very smart person who was mentoring me for just being a banker, now running a big school district or a big high school. There are no more sensitive institutions in the world to leadership than schools and churches. Because people are always there for the right reason, and there's not enough money to go around. Which means you really have to have great leadership to do great schools. So as mayor, I'm going to support great leaders in those schools because the teachers are good, they want to do well. They need the support of great leaders in those schools. That's the key. But we also need to have the fundamental ability to have teachers who aren't performing well to move on. That's why we passed 191. But it's out of respect for the career, not out of disrespect for that career. It was a tough vote.
Do unions make it a harder bill?
The unions opposed Senate Bill 191. And they made my vote, let me assure you, they made my vote very hard. We had lots of conversations.
Overall, in terms of what you're talking about with teachers, are unions an impediment to moving those teachers who need to move on?
I think, and somebody correct me with the current length of the DPS contract, I think the contracts are too prescriptive. I think they need to be simpler. But I think at the end of the day, 191 was done out of respect for teachers. And I think we can, unions, we can partner with them, but we need the dialogue to be respectful. And that's part of why I believe in charters. We need a respectful dialogue here. It's gotten a little partisan on this issue, but judge me as I am. You may not always agree with me, but I promise you, we're going to have the conversations that are long overdue. And quality teaching is a conversation that's long overdue. And Senate Bill 191 was a good bill.
Next, a question for James Mejia. Would you support a ranking system for schools based on performance? Why or why not? If yes, how would you rank them? And how would you use that data to change the low performance schools?
My short answer is yes. I would support a ranking of schools. I think whenever you look at schools, you need to look at the microcosm of how children are doing in schools. There's been far too much conversation about the school building themselves and far too little conversation about whether or not students are achieving at a high level. And let's get away from the politics of when you rank those schools, who gets hammered. and who has a difficult time with helping students achieve higher.